Hello, everyone. I want to take you through a short introduction to this activity we're about to do called Gathering Data Through Observing a Problem-Solving Team. What we've accomplished so far, it is important to remember, that brought us to this point in the residency weekend. First, we looked at different lenses, perspectives, especially when considered in groups, through the work that you have done utilizing the reading from Poole et al. Earlier today, we took these perspectives and we looked at them using different cases, what we call sort of wicked problems, and you discussed how these perspectives might guide the way that you consider how you might look at a particular part of these large wicked problems. You read in the readings in week 3 and 4 about different types of measurement of team-based effectiveness. And now we're going to use all of this knowledge to look at knowledge-producing teams that you've identified that you want to observe for your assignment due later in the semester. So today's activity is about giving an overview of the team you want to observe, that one pager that you developed, share that amongst the people in your group, why you might be interested in working with this group, what attracts you to working with this team, and what you think you could learn through your observation. What are the barriers, strengths, peculiarities, and normalities that might be going on in this team that has piqued your interest in wanting to observe them and see what's going on? What you will observe, meaning are you going to observe behaviors? Are you going to observe communication through email, dynamics in a meeting, what you think you're going to be looking at? And how will you measure effectiveness? More specifically, what from the different ways that we measure effectiveness in teams might you utilize in your activity as you prepare to observe this particular team? I want to talk about the difference between groups and teams. We oftentimes use those terms interchangeably, but groups are people working towards a goal whose work is coordinated by someone else. You might be a manager of a team at work where you divvy out responsibilities or tasks. You may be part of a group where you have only one task that you do while other people have different or multiple tasks. This is the type of group that we aren't typically referring to when we talk about a team. A team is people working together towards a common goal who coordinate their work amongst themselves. So teams are more associated with the idea that what I do is affected by the people that I work with, and what they do is affected by what I bring to the table. There's more interaction expected, and there's degrees of that interaction, but unlike groups, teams refer to the relationships between people that are part of a group that make their work contributory towards a goal that may require them to change, alter, adjust, be agile in the types of things that they bring to the group. So is it a group or a team? The group model, if you want to look at it a different way, is this idea of a common interest. We might all be interested in something that has a focus that we all want to participate in and hopefully achieve, but we don't necessarily are highly interactive, and what we do does not necessarily change what other people do, or other people don't necessarily change what I do. A team model is always going to have a core purpose. Sometimes we call it a mental model or a shared goal that everyone is participating in achieving. The first, in a group model, the focus is on individual goals and accountabilities, what I'm responsible for and what I need to be accountable for. The focus in a team model is mutual and individual accountability. So it's not just what I'm accountable for, it's what I hold the rest of the group to be accountable for as well. So the group model, group members jointly diagnose, problem solve, and collaborate to complete a task. In a team model, team performance and the essential qualities of collaboration are the hallmark of how that team is going to achieve their goals. If you remember the literature you read about cross-disciplinarity, a group model may be more a multidisciplinary model, where everyone has their individual responsibilities that contribute to some shared goal. A team model is typically more interdisciplinary or possibly even transdisciplinary because their interactions are actually creating a new way of doing things that could not be achieved by just individual contribution. A reading that you'll read later in the semester by Salas, Shuffler, Thayer, and Bedwell and Lazara talks about what we lovingly call in the field the 7 C's of teamwork. It's called the 7 C's because here in the middle, where it says core processes and emergent states, there's 6 C's, and really the influencing conditions we sort of lump together into 1 C. Let me explain this model to you. Basically, what it brings to our attention is that teamwork is the combination of multiple things that are going on that we could focus our attention on. In the darker part of this model, you'll see we talk about cooperation, coordination, cognition, conflict, coaching, and communication. As you can see, some of these sound very familiar to the types of perspectives we've been talking about. For instance, power differentials and conflict are represented here. Communication in the area, say, for instance, of knowledge transfer. And you can see a measurement of cognition. You can see how these 6 C's are in some ways adjacent to the perspectives that Poole talks about. Solace also includes this idea that with teams are influenced by the conditions that they work in. So for instance, these conditions can be the composition of a team, if they're disparate or if they're in the same place, if they're distance or face-to-face, maybe the culture of an organization and how that impacts the way teams work. For instance, if you're in a university where it's really hard to work on a team across schools, for instance, that culture is going to impact the way that teams function. I'm just going to push through here and give you some examples of what are the types of questions you might ask in each one of these areas, the core processes and emergent states. So for instance, in cooperation, what are the motivators, the feelings, the beliefs, attitudes towards working together? Coordination, what are the organizational structures for coordination, the cognitive mechanisms used to share ideas? Cognition, what are the shared mental models? How is information knowledge exchanged? Conflict, what are the team's capabilities and compatibilities? How or do these get resolved? Coaching, what models of leadership are apparent in a group? How do leaders and followers interact? How does leadership influence tasking and teaming? And lastly, in the area of communication, what types of communications are encouraged? What skills, techniques, technologies are used, for instance? And how does reciprocity fit into the teaming function? Lastly, the final C, or the 7th C, is what are the physical conditions? How do they affect teams? What culture does the team exist within? What culture does the team even try to create for itself? Now, I've often thought that you could take really anything that a team is dealing with and plug it into this construct of solaces. And here I'm just choosing to use the concept of time. And you could really ask the same questions in a way that help you understand what's going on in a team using these 7 C's based on a variable like time, for instance. For instance, how does differing concepts of time affect cooperation? Another example, what is the example of time leadership and influence? Um, Another example, how do you talk about time? What are the requirements of time? You could put in really any variable that you might be trying to observe within a team and ask these questions that are going to relate back to the core processes and emergent states and teams. We're going to do an activity. Don't worry about the time there. That's a arbitrary time. We're going to stay in your 3 groups that you've been broken up to. Share with your team for a couple minutes or distribute your one pager. Discuss the issues, strengths, barriers, and normalities of the team. What measurement techniques from sessions 3 and 4 of the course might you use to get to understand these issues? And how might you formulate a data observation plan? Be as specific as you can with the time available. Use this time to go to the next steps and map your plans, share your ideas about moving forward in this project. Some things to remember. Your observations of your team are not research with a capital R, but really an opportunity to learn from a real team, a team that is trying to solve specific problems and generate knowledge. This is not a diagnosis with a prescribed outcome for the team. You're going to want to help the team be more effective. Try to fight against that inclination. This is really an observation. It's a description of what's going on in the team, not a prescription of how you would fix something that maybe you feel could be improved upon. Think across techniques and perspectives from Pool and from the measurement tools in sessions 3 and 4. Make it reasonable. This is not a huge project and you have other work to do in this course, so try to keep it very containable and doable. And you need not be face-to-face, especially now in this era of COVID. And some of you would very much like to, but you're going to have to come up with ways to do this assignment that don't require you to be face-to-face. And I'm going to assume that many people are going to utilize some sort of communication technology. So there you have it. I just wanted to warm you up to this activity. We don't have a lot of time for the activity, so I encourage everyone to move swiftly through the parts of it, and we look forward to hearing what you come up with.